Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Get Jashed. Today I am so happy to have with me a fellow Aussie, Jordan Wright. Jordan is an internationally best-selling author of the Mandala Chronicles, which has been described as a mix between Harry Potter and The Secret, and has worked with people of all genres to help write their own books, and also won her publishing contract as well. This all includes everyone's individual stories and their personalities and their writing styles into their writing process when she helps people write their books, which is really, really important because we're going to talk about that today as well. And another little fun fact is Jordan has a 1.5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, both born on the same day. So there is a lot going on in your life, and I'm so grateful to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. All of those little facts seem important. First of all, what star sign is your kids like, and what are you dealing with there?
They're both Geminis, but they're right on the cusp of Gemini and Cancer.
Are they on the 19th?
Yeah.
Me too.
No way.
Yeah. That's the best. I knew there was a reason I had to ask. I'm like,
Yeah.
there's something about this. I just need to know.
Yeah. Because, my mom's born on the 26th, which is exactly 7 days afterwards, and my mom's a Cancer. But so my son was actually due on my mom's birthday, but he came early.
I was due on the 26th.
Oh, amazing.
Oh my God. Okay. We'll get into the actual episode in a moment, but that's really cool. So there's a lot of personalities going on in your house, which probably gives you a lot to work with when it comes to your writing as well, right?
Absolutely. I have zero rest, but it's good because once you get on it, when I can't like wind down after looking after my little energetic beings, I write.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's a good little process to work with.
I used to live with another Gemini, and my mum would ask, she's like, so how are the four of you doing? Like, we're great, thank you. But so with your writing, get back on track, Jess, but like with your writing, what I wanted to really dive into, because as I mentioned to you before we started recording, like I write a little bit, and I only write a little bit because I don't feel like I've dedicated the time required and the effort required to do that internal journey that happens with writing as well. And it is a journey. So what was that experience for you?
Well, for me, the journey really came from the fact for the Magdala Chronicles anyway, for my fiction books. The journey really came from the fact that I just knew I had to get it out into the world. Like it wasn't a negotiable. I had goosebumps the entire time, right from the moment I got the idea to when I started writing it to when it actually got published. So for me, the journey started from me going, I don't have a choice. People need to read this book. And so I really had to, for lack of a better phrase, pull my finger out and just go, and ask myself the questions, what do I need to do to get this book out? Why am I doing this? And how can I expect the world to react? And so those were the three main motivators for me, because I just really felt like the books had a message and had the potential to be something that could be another, global phenomenon like Harry Potter or Twilight or even Percy Jackson or something like that. So it's just, for me, it was just the knowledge that I knew the world needed my story. And that's what I help people with when I help them write their books, because the biggest block that people have is people don't want to read my book, or people don't want to hear my story. And that's 100% not the truth, because the world actually needs your story. And regardless of whether something similar has been written before, it's not your story. And the world needs your story. And when people overcome that and they realize that, oh, wait, I am actually going to create an impact, that's the biggest step of overcoming of the internal journey, is when they go, okay, it does need to, I am going to be making a difference with this. And so that's the biggest thing that I work with other people with.
Yeah. And that can be such a thing that we do have blocks with, like it's that people don't want to read it, or I don't have a story to tell. like can be the other one as well. But you have shared that, you found that creative way in a really beautiful way of like of making it into fiction, but still inherently having those messages that are really core to you and really, really important to you as well. Is there like writing fiction, is there a sense of vulnerability in that for you?
Absolutely, because you're sharing a part of yourself that normally people wouldn't know about.
Uh-huh.
Your imagination is such an escape from reality, right? It's your
Mm,
safe place, and when you put it on paper, it has you have opened yourself up in such a raw way to people you've never met before, and either you're going to find people that either love it or they hate it. There's really no in between when it comes to that, especially when you're creating something that you really want people to be able to immerse themselves in as well. So if you're writing in a real full all in type of way,
mm.
there's I've found there's no in between. They either love it or they don't, and which is fine either way, because just because something works for you doesn't mean it's going to work for other people. But it's terrifying to put it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely terrifying, but it's such a thrill at the same time.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. Like, because I asked for fiction because like I've I've dabbled in I'm like, oh, no one knows this. Like I've dabbled in like I have drafts of like fiction there, but I also have drafts of some kind of nonfiction as well. And both are equally as hard. Like, and people who are like, well, you're just making up stories. Like if it's fiction, it's like, no, because it's I'm showing you deeper layers of me and my imagination and what those stories, like how I imagine those stories might play out, which like on a psychology level that could be read into really, really richly or really easily, if anyone wanted to. So
Yeah.
um it is such a writing itself and sharing your words in whatever format. My experience is it's such a vulnerable experience, but it is so thrilling. Like you said,
Yeah.
like it's like thrilling because you're also like, I get to be seen and I get to be heard, whatever that is. Like I'm expressing myself as well. So what with that internal process for you, like as you were writing, because there's like the choice to make, like to start writing, that kind of thing, and there's the vulnerability of like sharing it, but as part of the process of your writing and figuring out this story as it goes on, like what was the journey internally for you, like along that process? How long was that process?
Well, the first book took me about it took about 4 years to finally get published
Mm.
between the starting and the publishing, but it took about 3 years to write.
Hmm.
It's because my daughter was only like she wasn't even one yet, and I started writing. I got the inspiration for it, and then I started. There's two different types of writers. There's plotters and there's pantsers. So
Hmm.
plotters like plot everything out. They have the structure. They know where they're going. They just need to flesh it all out. Pantsers kind of just go with the flow. They have a general idea. They know what their characters' ages are, what they want them to look like in that general scope, but they tend to just go with the flow. And I am a pantser. I started off
Mm.
writing this series as a plotter. And so I had to rewrite basically the entire first book because I stuck to what my original idea was. But as I was writing, it needed to expand. There were things that needed to be told in different ways the story needed to go. And so when I went back and did the drafts, I did about 7 drafts of this first book. I had to weave in everything that I knew needed to go in there. And I'm so pleased I did, because the way people, children especially, are reacting to this book has been beyond my imagination. It's been absolutely incredible. And it's really impacted the way I've been writing. I wrote my second book and now my third book of the series as well, which I'm writing at the moment, because I've had kids as young as 8 read this book, and because I weave in like gratitude and manifestation and visualization,
Mm.
and I talk about the ego and how your thoughts become things, but also how what you're thinking isn't necessarily true. And I don't know about you, but I didn't know that when I was 8, so I didn't I wasn't exposed to.
No, wish I did.
Yeah. And so what's been happening is that these kids as young as 8 have been sitting at their desk after the school bell's rung, because the teacher was reading it to them. After the school bell would have rung, and if they hadn't done their gratitude or their visualization or their manifestation, they would sit there and do it at the end of the school day. But then the other thing that she said was that these 8-year-olds were starting to really open up and talk about how they were feeling and the things that were bothering them, because I mentioned about how what they were thinking wasn't necessarily true. So, like, for example, for an 8-year-old, if their friends had a bad day and they aren't talking to them or something, you know, they take it super personally. I mean, I still take it personally if my friend's not talking to me. And it's not a personal thing necessarily, but, you know, it's something really, really anxiety inducing for, especially for an 8-year-old who doesn't understand, and they're still learning emotions and stuff. But what this teacher said was that these kids were starting to open up and understand. And she said, I could visibly see their shoulders relaxing. Like these kids that carried anxiety, they were visibly relaxing. And that is beyond what I could have ever have hoped as an author. And it's really impacted the way that I'm writing these next books. The second book, I love, but this third book that I'm writing at the moment, I'm hoping will just shed some light for these kids and these readers, for them to be able to immerse themselves as these characters and actually start weaving these skills into their everyday life, you know, because I mean, if I had learned this stuff, or if I had a book like this when I was 8, the way I process things now would be so different.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Like, well, that's it, right? Like, because it's all these skills that we hopefully all learn. Like, we don't all necessarily, but, you know, like a lot of us are starting to learn more of as well, especially the more research that we understand around those things. And like, when you think about it as formative, like in our formative years, if that was just a part of what was normal, it would make a huge difference to how we entered adulthood and how we felt about ourselves and our lives and what we then do with it, instead of it being this big struggle sometimes that it can be, or like the peeling back the layers, or and there's always going to be layers, but, you know, it would just be a different experience, I feel. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. that is incredible. With the trilogy, are they like, they're all part of the same story, but they're just like sequels and from there?
Well, there's going to be 5 books. So
okay, great. Yeah.
So I'm just writing the 3rd of the 5th. So it's kind of like the way Harry Potter, you know, grows as a series. It's
because you mentioned, like, I've heard of that analogy, but I've heard it, I can't remember the other word, but like there's gardeners and there's architects, and gardeners are the ones that just let like things grow as they go, and they're like, oh, there's a frond going over here, cool, let's just go that. And then like, so they were like, I think the context was George R. Martin was a gardener, because he had so many different sprouts going in every single direction, whereas like there's architects, which are the planners and everything like that. And I love that you allowed yourself to shift as you needed, because I am a bit of a planner, but then I would worry that I'm not like getting into the juice of it. So almost like by expressing that, it gives other people permission to do the same as well, as it's needed. Like, you can start in one way and that can really serve you, and then you can shift and that can really serve you as well.
Well, that's what we're not taught that in schools, you know. We're not taught that it's okay to go with the flow. We're taught this is how it works, this is the structure, it has to have this, this, and this. And it's so hard to unlearn these things, you know. It's so hard to unlearn what people you respect, basically, or what you've been learning for so long have told you what to do, and then trust yourself instead. It's such a massive process. And that's how I love helping other people with, is because the way that I work with people is I flesh out not the structure of their books, but I help them decide some power questions for the chapters, and then I just teach them how to answer them in such a way that the story flows and it's so authentic to them, you know.
Which helps people express their voice as well, and communicate what they want to communicate in whichever kind of writing that they're doing too, which is the whole point. it's really interesting that the timing of this. I'm listening to Mary Magdalene Revealed by Megan Watterson.
Yeah.
Have you read it?
I haven't, but it's on my list.
It's really powerful. It was actually a previous guest who highlighted it for me, and it had come up a few times, and she's like, you need to read it. And it was only yesterday that she was talking about Jane Eyre and how that was Charlotte Bronte's, like, it was like her church, you know, like it was her gospel almost, of like her, you know, love for all of that. Like it was really way better expressed than what I just did. But it got me thinking about how when we write, especially when women write and express ourselves, like we don't need a church, we don't need a pulpit for that kind of thing. We can do this in the, like, and anyone, like men and women, but in that context it was about like women because priests are men and everything. But is we have this way of delivering our sermons by in creative different ways that still reach people, that still reach people's hearts, that still, like, and you're reaching these kids' hearts by delivering your sermon in that way. And it's just really, I really love that perspective on it as well.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Like I've had the 8-year-olds have been the youngest that I know of who have read the book, but I've had people as old as 70 who are also loving the book. Like that's why I like saying it's a mix between Harry Potter and The Secret, is because there's the magical Harry Potter genre that people love, and then there's also the law of attraction genre that people love as well. But the whole inspiration behind it was to create this law of attraction manifestation type of book, but in that completely fiction sense, so that people did have the opportunity to completely immerse themselves in it. So it wasn't a lesson, it was an enjoyable experience for them, but they're also learning without realizing it, you know?
Yeah, where it doesn't feel like work, because, you know, like I have like a stack of this many books reading, and like a couple of them are fiction and a couple of them are different kinds of non-fiction. And you pick it based on your mood, but sometimes you don't want to do more work as such. Like you don't want to be like, oh, I don't want to feel like I'm learning right now, I just want to enjoy, I just want to be entertained. But obviously, like whatever we do consume does seep in anyway, right? So that's such a clever way of doing it too.
Well, I was always one of those people who just completely immersed myself in whatever it was that I was interested in at the time, whether it was Harry Potter, whether it was Sailor Moon, or whether it was, you know, whatever it was, like I would become the characters. And because and it's not an addictive personality, but you know how people with an addictive personality become totally engrossed in what they're addicted to. That was like me as a kid, and probably still now, in my favorite TV shows and books. But that was me as a kid, just totally like becoming addicted to these storylines and these characters, and wanting to incorporate aspects of their personality and their skills into my own life. And what I'm banking on is that people still do that.
I think they do. And I think, like, especially in this era of the pandemic, of there are things to consume, but we're kind of Mark Manson, actually, all this timely stuff. Mark Manson actually shared something yesterday about our attention spans, how we're only in it for like 15-second kind of reels or TikToks or whatever, or we need to immerse ourselves in it. We're not doing the halfway at the moment. Like we can't, like movies itself are harder. And it's interesting because I've found that, like, I don't know if it's been exclusively since the pandemic, but definitely at least for that long, I found that like I'm watching less movies because I'm like, no, I either want a TV show
that hit,
or a long-standing TV show. Like I either want the sitcom or, like, you know, like the one I can dive into for 9 seasons. Yes, the 15. That's one of the things I'm on my rewatch. Like I'm rewatching a lot as well. But like it's the one or the other. So I think that as human nature isn't going away, because we still crave being able to step into worlds, because it feeds our imaginations. And sometimes, like at the moment,
it's the escape from reality.
Yes, exactly. Like at the moment, especially, it is that escape from reality, and it's not necessarily avoidance of reality, but it is a reprieve, which is really important as well. So having things like that, and I love that it's a 5-book format too, because I feel like that would be the same thing. Like the three, like based on that rule as such, like the 3 books would be the movie, and that's
Yeah.
not long enough. Like you either want a book or you want like a whole freaking series of it.
Yeah. I've already got like the next set of 5 planned out as well in my head, like a
Yeah.
prequel series. So yeah, for anyone who's read the book, I'm planning a prequel series for the Guardians.
That's
But
amazing. So
yeah.
because you talk about like the law of attraction and like manifestation and everything as part of that, so you won your publishing contract.
I did.
Was that something that you intentionally like set out to do prior to knowing, like what happened there?
Yeah, well, I worked the law of attraction to the bone to get that publishing contract.
Yes.
But the way it worked, well, when I first started my book and I first finished my book and I first wanted to get it published, I chatted to probably 30 different publishers, and my publisher I went with was actually the last one that I was set to chat with. And she's a hybrid publisher, which means that she's the best of traditional publishing and the best of the self-publishing. So you get the professional standard like look of the book, you get the professional level of the marketing, but you also get to keep full creative control, and you get 100% of the royalties.
I
So
love that.
Yeah, and it's amazing, and I would never go another way ever, because I love having my creative control. But because of it, you pay her in advance. Because you get 100% of the royalties, you pay her in advance, and then you get the package with it, which I think is brilliant, but not something that I could afford at the time. So I went out, I was like, well, I'll try and crowdfunding or getting a lot of pre-launch sales in, and should try and help pay for this book. And I remember a friend of mine saying, he said, oh, he's been working with the law of attraction for years and years and years. He said, oh, he just said offhandedly, he's like, oh, if it's meant to be, you'll get it for free. And me with all my money blocks.
I like it.
Yeah. But me with all my money blocks at the time was like, oh no, I couldn't possibly get it for free. I'm just thinking, maybe the money will come to me somehow, or, I'm going to do all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. Anyways, fast forward like a couple of weeks, and my publisher put an Indie April 2019 publishing competition on Twitter, and I never used Twitter ever. And so I entered it, and then a couple of months later I won. I beat out a few hundred other authors to win. But it was one of those things, that I was manifesting it, but I felt it as well. And so whenever I enter a competition now and I don't win, like for like a whatever it is, I'm like, I always win the things that I need. I always win the things I'm supposed to win. And that's one of those things that that I just have just allowed into my mindset now. Instead of being like, I don't win anything, I'm like, well, actually, no, I do.
Yeah.
I win the things I need.
That's a really good point too, actually, because I think I used to be like that. I'm like, I don't win anything, because I never did win anything until I guess like actions in my life aligned with what I need as well. Like I had a moment last year that happened with that. I was in a coaching course like to qualify as a life coach, and it was a 6-week course. And at the beginning, they're like, yeah, so like we give one person in this course, and they were like, a lot of people in it. I want to say 200 something, but maybe not. I don't know. Like, doesn't matter. But like, they're like, we give one person a scholarship to our masters, which is the 12-week, like program and everything. And I'm like, oh yeah. Like, and in that first call, I was just sitting there. I was at my friend's place because I was up the coast, and I was just like, that's mine.
Yeah.
And I felt like I didn't feel anything about it. Like there was no attachment to it. There wasn't like I need it. It was just like oh yeah, I think it's mine. And then I left it, and then I ended up getting it. So it's just like, it is the things that it's about, like the things we need. And I think with the law of attraction as well, like it's not just out of nowhere. It still requires those steps. Like for us, the more in alignment we are with our lives, the more in alignment we are with ourselves, and make those choices that are in alignment with ourselves, the more we're able to then receive the things that we need, right? And that's a key part of it. It's not just like, you can't be in a job that you hate and be like, yeah, but I'm never going to leave, but I expected this job offer.
Yeah.
Necessarily, like it just like making things anti-aligned with you. Like,
or people who go, oh, I'm so ready for things to change for me financially, but they're still out buying cigarettes every day, or they're gambling their money away, or they're just wishing for money. They're not like making any specific changes. They're just expecting to receive it. it's just one of those things. It's one of those, like Jim Carrey said when he first started out, when he had that check in his wallet and he wanted to be the actor, and he said, oh, by this date I'm going to be making $1 million thanks to acting services. And he said, and I didn't go and sit down and make a sandwich, you know, I networked and I auditioned and I did all this stuff.
He did stuff.
You have to do the work, but the work is actually fun. When you're on the right path, the work is actually fun. It's hard, but it's hard. Fun.
Yeah, like, and the way I explain it to different clients or different students as well is like, you know, you can set your intention, for example. Like if you use the word intention, you can set your intention or find your values, and that they are then what drive your decisions from there.
Yeah.
So that is the work. Like that is that you, like, it's not just stating something, it's going, okay, but does my decision support me being open for this, or does it support me in that direction, or, you know, like,
yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's so powerful because I think especially as we get older, you know, we start to expect things. We just start to expect things, like we feel like we're owed things, or, you know, like I know I have really struggled. I had to move past a block with my dad. He's an amazing guy, but he's been through the ringer a couple of times, and he, instead of like asking what could be learned from it, he said, oh, well, I've been through this, so I must be getting this soon, you know. And he, you know, he started to expect things, you know, I've had all the bad, you know, it must be time for some good. And I was like, well, you're creating it. You know, you're it's everything you wished for. You just weren't, you know, either specific enough, or you just weren't ready to accept what it actually entailed, you know.
And it's all like, all of those things are always an opportunity anyway. Like I don't necessarily feel like this was meant to happen as such, like in a lot of those instances, but it's like, this is an opportunity, and like, you know, what choices can you make differently? And, you know, obviously, like in some circumstances it is very much outside of us, like it's systemic, but in others, like, you know, like it's like a smoker, and it's like, oh, but I have cancer, and, you know, it's just like, well, that
would be
is a different choice that you can make, like,
or I can't get rid of this cough.
Exactly. So I love that you're bringing that awareness into like the awareness of that into younger generations as well, like as they grow, and in a grounded way. It's just a really powerful way of storytelling, and I think storytelling as a species is how we've survived and how we've grown and evolved. And I really truly believe that it's through our stories historically that have gotten us there.
Story, songs, you know, all that kind of stuff. Absolutely, it's so powerful. But that's why I'm so passionate about everyone sharing their own stories, is because, you know, just because someone else has written a book similar doesn't mean that it's going to affect the people that you need to affect in the same way that it, you know.
It's like, I think I don't know if it was Shakespeare who said this, but there's a link to Shakespeare in my mind about it, is like there's only like 7 original stories anyway, but it's really like, so, you know, like we're not going to create like entirely original like plot points, right? But the way we tell it, it's with our voices, whether it's a nonfiction, whether it's about our lives, or as a self-help, or as a fiction and a storytelling manner, like it's our voice that gives it its flavor. It's our use of language that, you know, helps certain people resonate with it. So like the more that we are all sharing our stories, the more that, like, if writing is aligned, obviously, like not everyone wants to write, but like the more that there are people who want to write, sharing their stories, the more reach that people will have, even if it's the same overarching message, right? There will be different people that relate to different people, like authors, and that is the whole point, because it's about giving that to the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's not everyone is going to enjoy everything, and that's kind of the whole point. That's why there's so many different people out there doing their different things.
Exactly.
Because if one person satisfied everyone's needs, there would be no need for anything else, you know?
Yeah, totally. Oh, I love that so much. I feel like I could nerd out all day with you on this.
Yes.
Where can people find you, your work, your book? where can they find all of that?
Yeah, well, I'm just on Facebook as Jordan Wright, same as on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, all of that kind of jazz. I love it. I have a Facebook group called Share Your Story Writing Made Easy, so you can find me on there as well. On my page is Jordan Wright, nonfiction ghostwriter and author. And you can find my book, The Mandala Chronicles, on Amazon.
Awesome. And I will include all of those links in the caption and show notes, so that anyone listening can come back and find them. But thank you so much for sharing your story, and thank you so much for sharing it here with us as well, and being another one of those guiding lights along the way. I'm very, very grateful.
It's been so amazing to chat with you.